I'm here to introduce you to the very charming and not so hard to play American folk style banjo. We're using a 5-string banjo, which is a typical banjo being used for bluegrass and many other kinds of music today. It's typically finger-picked, which I was just doing, and I'll show you just a little bit about the banjo itself before we get into how to play it. A banjo is basically a head, a neck, and a pot. I know some people would call it a body, but it's actually called a pot by banjo pickers. The head contains tuning pegs. One additional tuning peg is down here halfway down the neck. You don't see this on guitars, you don't see this on 6-string banjos or 4-string banjos, but you do see it on 5-string banjos. And this is a note that gives the banjo its ring. You hear that all the time when you're playing a 5-string banjo, and that's very important. It gives it part of the tone that we appreciate of this style of banjo. The pot has brackets that attach the head. The head is a drum head. It's made by Remo, as likely as not, a typical drum head manufacturer. The head is also held down by a tension ring. The strings start down here at the tailpiece. They fasten in on the end. They cross the bridge, which is a specially carved piece of wood that is made to transmit the vibrations of the strings as much as possible to the head of the banjo. Then they cross the fingerboard, so-called because that's where your fingers play, and they come across the nut, which is at the top of the neck. All the vibrations that you hear on a banjo happen between the nut and the bridge, and that's one reason why the neck is so important, because you can see that's where all the real action is. I'm holding a specific banjo here on purpose. This is the Deering Goodtime, which is the best student banjo that you can buy. I'm sorry, there are more expensive brands and there are cheaper brands. This is made in America and it comes ready to play. It seldom goes out of adjustment. It stays in tune, and I'm recommending it over all of those Chinese banjos that you can buy, and when you get them you have to have them set up professionally before you can even really play a tune on them. Or if you do get them set up, and I speak from experience, they're constantly coming in and out of adjustment due to weather. That's something that somehow or other Deering has managed to get out of the Goodtime banjo line. This is not my best banjo, but it's my travel banjo. It only weighs about 4 pounds, so it's especially good for young people or people with not much arm strength. I'm going to introduce another banjo momentarily, just to show an example of a different kind of banjo you can start with. But I just want you to keep in mind that, that starting with a good banjo will take you a lot farther, a lot faster than starting with something that isn't really made to serve the needs of a beginner or of a professional, either one. You'll notice that instead of my hand being out here when I play the banjo now, it's here. And that's because this is called an A-scale banjo. It's about 3 frets shorter than a standard banjo length. It's a little over 4 inches shorter, which makes it extremely handy for people with short arms, young people who haven't grown into their full height yet, and also makes it handier for backpacking. I wouldn't take this particular A-length banjo backpacking because it's actually very heavy. It has not only a resonator, but it also has 2 coordinator rods, which you can't see, and a tone ring, which you can't see, but which adds quite a bit to the volume and the tone of the banjo and to the weight. The Goldtone also makes, this is the Goldtone Cc Traveler. They also make one that's called a Travel, and it's similar to this in size, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, so it's much lighter weight. It costs a lot less too. The Deering equivalent of this, of the A-length banjo, is called a parlor banjo. So if you're looking for a Deering Goodtime for somebody with short arms or for backpacking, look no farther than the Deering parlor banjo. I don't have one of those to show you, but I don't really need to because this does the job. Now I'm going to show you the basic way that you hold your hand, your left hand, to play the chords in a banjo. I'm going to play a G chord now. I want you to watch very carefully and see how that is done. I'm using a standard G tuning, which is the most common tuning for bluegrass these days, and I'm going to play a G chord now. Are you ready? That is a G chord. Would you like to see it again? One reason you can play bluegrass so fast is because you have that default chord that always goes back. Even if your arms are way up here, you can always go to that and sneak another note or two in. Now, in order to play actual chords where you put your fingers on the frets, I'm going to zoom in a little and hope that I get about the right angle on it. These little babies are called the frets. You don't want to put your finger on the fret because that will deaden the string. Instead, you put your finger behind the fret. Your goal is to force the string down onto the fret. The fret is hard. Your fingertip isn't hard, but the fret is hard. And if you force the string down on the fret, then you'll get that clear sound. The first chord that I show in the book or in the on the web page, besides G, is a D7 suspended fourth chord, which goes like this. You put your first finger right here on the second string. By the way, the strings are numbered from the bottom to the top. So this is the first string, second string, third string, fourth string, fifth string. So you put your first finger on the second string behind the first fret, and then you put your second finger on the third string behind the second fret. The hard part when you're first learning is to get your fingers to come down straight. Now I'm using a tennis racket hold. You really shouldn't. Theoretically, you should hold it more like this, but the real important part is that you get your fingers to come down straight on the strings, because if they don't, they will deaden. If your strings sound like that, that's because this finger is deadening the string next to it because it's not coming straight down. They will deaden the strings but next to it if you don't get them straight down. The D suspended fourth is the closest thing to a D on the banjo that's easy to play, and that's one reason why it's used in so many songs. Real D chord, I will show you, is like this, and I show that on the website. But we won't use that for a while. We won't use this chord for a long time, because as long as you're in the key of G, and you want to go to that D suspended fourth, there's a real piece of cake to do that, rather than... See the difference? Now there aren't very many songs that you can sing with just two chords, but one of them is Buffalo Gals. Has a G chord. The way we're going to sing is going to have a G chord and a D suspended fourth. I'm not going to do anything fancy with my right hand yet. I'm just showing you how the chords work. So it's Buffalo Gals, won't you come out tonight? You got that? Oh, I haven't done anything yet. Have a come out tonight. That's my D suspended fourth. Come out tonight. Buffalo Gals, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light of the moon? I danced with the dolly with a hole in her stocking, and her toes kept a locking and her knees kept a knocking. I danced with the dolly with a hole in her stocking, and we danced by the light of the moon. That's enough of that song, don't you think? There's a whole lot of songs that use this chord back and forth, use these two chords back and forth again and again and again. Now we're going to show you one more chord that you need to learn this lesson, and it's a C chord. It's you start once again with your first finger on the second string behind the first fret. Now you get your ring finger into the action. It goes onto the first string behind the second fret, and finally your second finger reaches all the way across and hits the fourth string on the second fret. Now you can go back and forth once you've got that C figured out, because the G is so easy to play. It's not hard to go back and forth between the two. Sound like a folk singer there for a second, don't I? So an example that I have in the book is this little light of mine. So we're going to do that, do a verse of that, just to show how these chords go together. By the way, most folk songs are based around three chords. Now they may be hard to sing in the key of G, but you can often play them in the key of G with just these 3 chords. So just learning these chords is actually a big step. So this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Did you see that? I went between the G and the C there. I'm gonna do it again. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine all the time. Now I have the chord diagrams in the web page so you can look at them again. But it's just the G, C, G, G, a bunch of G's, and then to a D7 suspended fourth. Now when I say D7 suspended fourth, I'm saying the whole name of the chord. Frequently in sheet music they'll just write it as D7 or even just as D. If you're in the key of G and you're going to go to anything called a D, chances are this is the chord they're looking for. And those are the 3 chords not only that make up that particular song, but probably make about 1,000 other songs that are commonly played on banjo, especially on bluegrass banjo, because they just love the key of G in bluegrass. Well, that's going to be it for this lesson, and I hope that you figure that out. And if you have any problems at all, I've got a contact line on every page of my webpage, and I hope that you give me a call and tell me, Paul, you messed me up. Paul, this didn't work. Or Paul, you changed my life. Whatever you want to say, just write it into me, and I appreciate it very much. Have a great day.